Arizona School Authority tracking COVID cases across the state. In Maricopa County, there are now 47 active coronavirus outbreaks right now and several zip codes across the valley that are in red. The biggest outbreak appears right now to be concentrated at Castile High School in Gilbert. The Chandler Unified School District revealing 22 active infections on that campus. There are also outbreaks in 2 schools in Ahwatukee, the biggest at Desert Vista with 8 cases of infected people there, and the number is causing many districts to reverse their reopening plans. Growing number of schools are sliding backward toward full-time or hybrid learning from hybrid to virtual learning back to learning at home.
When our schools close in-person instruction, it is devastating to our communities.
State superintendent and health officials sharing their concern of the spread of coronavirus here in Arizona and at schools. This news conference yesterday addressing what they are calling twin crises. They are sounding the alarm about the virus and also youth suicide. Not only do families need to worry about staying healthy, but this year there have already been 43 suicides in Arizona. The victims under 17 years old, some as young as 12. So joining us this morning is the Arizona Superintendent of Schools, Kathy Hoffman. Superintendent Hoffman, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We have a lot of questions. I know you guys have a lot on your plate. Let's talk first. More than 3,400 new cases just reported an hour or so ago. Does this worry you?
I've been worried for the past several weeks as we've seen the numbers start to increase, and Dr. Chris and the EDHS has started to warn our communities of this new spike, this new increase of COVID cases in our communities. I'm extremely worried because we have already seen an increased number of outbreaks in our schools, which has caused schools to have to close their facilities for in-person instruction. I'm starting to talk to many more superintendents who are making plans to transition back to distance learning, and this is devastating for our school communities when we want nothing more than for our students to be in the classroom where we can provide those wraparound supports for them.
And we know the districts and the schools doing their part as much as they can. Let's talk about, though, the other crises that we're seeing and how this all connects. Youth suicides, 38 in all last year. We know there's been a increasing problem in the East Valley. Already 43, many connected to the pandemic, that isolation. So how do you find this balance between let's keep our kids back at home because it's maybe safer to stop the spread versus we need them in school so they can be around their friends and not be in this depression that we've seen with the pandemic?
This is the impossible decision that our school leaders are faced with. And that's why I wanted to elevate these concerns with Dr. Christ, that we show that strong partnership and collaboration around addressing these issues head on. I am deeply concerned about the uptick in youth suicides, one of which we discussed yesterday was Superintendent Caruth from the Vail School District, where I used to work. And one of their recent students that they lost to suicide was 13 years old, which actually means that it could have been one of the students that I worked with when I worked in the Vail School District. So that really hit home for me. And I just can't even imagine what the devastation that causes, the grief for the students, for the teachers, for the school leaders. So to me, that needed to elevate the importance of doing everything we can as a community to keep our schools open by preventing the spread of this virus, because our schools are one of the most essential services that our community has.
One of those steps, we know sports for the winter have been canceled at schools, but what about all the sports that's happening outside of school? You know, I know you guys stressed yesterday, part of the spread is what's happening not on school, but outside of school, people getting together, playing sports and club sports. Is it time to end those? Is it time to close up gyms? Where do we go?
Well, I would point everyone, including our athletic directors, any sport leaders in the state, to be looking at the benchmarks, to be looking at the COVID data. The AIA organization, which oversees our sports for the state, they have benchmarks, the AIA benchmarks, which indicated that because the COVID numbers are so high as of last week, that they recommended it's not safe to start winter sports in 8 out of the 15 counties, including Maricopa County. I mean, it doesn't take much to see that that close contact sports like wrestling and basketball put our students and coaches and as a result our communities at risk. I used to be an athlete. I swam all through high school, and I know how hard this is. That the sports and athletics are the bedrocks of our communities, but sometimes we have to make really difficult choices. Do we want our schools to be able to open for in-person instruction and be open for our students to be in the classroom? Or what do we need to do about sports and extracurriculars and the other things that I would say maybe are not as important?
We could go on forever. Unfortunately, we're almost out of time, but I do have this question. Do you think online learning for everyone across the state is inevitable? I know you guys have different benchmarks. They've changed. You said last week you don't agree. You never were consulted with the changes that Governor Ducey made, saying we have to hit all three and then talk to consultants before any kind of going back to online learning.
Well, that decision is still left up to the local level, and I do need to point out that online learning is not possible in some of our communities, especially in some of our tribal communities where access to internet is not available, where, for example, in Navajo Nation, only about 25% of students have internet access. So while it may seem like, oh, why not, maybe this is not a big deal to transition to online learning, well, some of our students don't even have access to internet. So we can't make this decision lightly. And this is, again, devastating for our school communities, and the long-term effects of learning loss in Arizona are going to be tremendous.
All right. Thank you so much for shedding some light on this. I know you guys have a big task on your plate and looking at the numbers and the situations closely. So we'll continue to follow and hopefully talk to you real soon to get an update as well. Thank you very much, Superintendent Kathy Hoffman, this morning.